Yeah, so how is everything not lost, or we're not privy to it because of national security? I mean, national security is like the all-encompassing excuse to just not tell the people anything.
And Sibyl Edmonds, she can't really speak about anything still till this day.
She can more now than she ever could, but no, she had the state secrets privilege gag order put out on her twice. So, I mean...
And even in the recently released documents from Krypton with her testimony, the pages are all just blank.
Yeah, and so we want to see the unredacted testimony, you know.
You were also mentioning how Able Danger ties into the whole situation.
I mean, she's, you know, part of what she was talking about is that that the terrorists were already identified or that some of them were already known to be in the country. And Able Danger, I don't know if it's the same information she's talking about. Probably just the same type of information. But yeah, no, they identified, I believe it was 3 of the 9/11 hijackers beforehand. Now, Anthony Schaefer, one of the people, the colonel that was involved in this, he says there was this chart which showed Mohammed Atta on it.
Oh, he's the one that wrote that book, Operation Darkheart.
Mm-hmm. So he's saying there was this chart that existed where it showed Mohammed Atta, that they had identified him as an Al-Qaeda operative and had a picture of him there. You know, he has, I believe, 5 witnesses in addition to him, I believe, or at least 5 with him, 4 others, who stated that they either saw this chart or knew of it. They're backing up his story in one way or another. They've been called by other top officials that credible, you know, they seem like credible witnesses, upstanding people, but that there's just no proof this chart can't be found. So there you go. They all said they saw it. They're all credible witnesses according to high-level officials. But since they can't find the information, then, you know, his story can't be supported. Now, where'd it go? Debunkers say, well, it never existed in the first place. They actually said recently, one of the Screw Loose Change blog guys, the other one that posts on there, James B., said, oh, well, you know, it was supposed to be an open source intelligence gathering information. So if that means that it should be out there to where we can find it, and we should be able to, you know, find some information that shows that Mohammed Atta could have been identified by open source intelligence. But that's not the only method they used. They also used non-open source. They used informants and things like that. So that's just one of the things they used. And, you know.
Right, like you were mentioning something about one of the Jersey girls getting information from some guy.
Yeah, FBI whistleblower.
And then the JREFers or something were saying that it didn't count because it was just...
Well, I guess because it's hearsay, and it's not the actual agent bringing it forward. And then, you know, they say that some con man, Pat Curley said that some con man probably just told her this. Well, on its face, that doesn't make sense. Who would tell a 9/11 widow something like that? And what she says she was told is that the government knew the exact day, the type of attacks, and the targets.
And she would be open to privy information because, you know, she's that close to the case. You know, obviously the guy can't come out and say anything because it's classified information.
Right, and she says that she met these people to have a chat on the side of the road in Maryland, or met them on the side of the road in Maryland. I don't think she means she just stumbled upon a guy on the side of the road in Maryland like, oh, hi, how are you? I'm out here looking at the view. Oh, me too. Hey, are you in the FBI? Yeah, I am. Do you know they had knowledge of 9/11 beforehand? I don't think it happened like that. She was working with bona fide whistleblowers, so I believe this was probably a meeting that was set up, you know, to give her some information. And she stated before that, or at the same time that she brought this out, she stated that she was promised that all the whistleblowers that they had would be heard by the commission, and then none of them were. And then even to get Sibel heard, that they had to surprise the commission and bring her in one day.
Right, like some of the family members were actually just surprised bringing in people, even though the commission wouldn't hear their testimony. They got them to give it anyway.
Yeah, some of them, at least Sibel. She said that the other whistleblowers, they would not speak to the commission unless they were subpoenaed. So she was telling them they need to be subpoenaed and be given immunity, you know, that they can speak openly about these things without fear of retribution, and they weren't heard. So, again, there was no good investigation into this. Debunkers, you know, whenever you can't prove it was an inside job, you just like to say we want a new investigation. Well, that's what I've wanted all along. I believe that the evidence leads toward that, and I believe that. But that doesn't mean other people have to believe it. That doesn't mean they have to believe it. They could still support us and realize there's a cover-up here.
There's mountains of evidence to show that we weren't told the truth.
Yeah.
Right, because Tony Crawford told Condoleezza Rice, who told George Bush that it was a commercial jet, before Bush walked in the classroom to read the book, so it was before 9 a.m. when they knew it was a commercial jet in the chain of command.
Looking at it compared to the events of 9/11, you have the third strike at the Pentagon. That strike takes place at 9:38. I misspoke when I did the other interview and said that that's when the plane took off. That's time of impact. So that's 44 minutes after the plane veered off course at 8:54. And that's a conservative figure. There are people that put the figure higher, but that's a figure that even Mike Williams of 911myths.com, he agrees with that. So by this time, the first tower had already been struck, and as I mentioned, you have those FAA warnings, those 52 pre-9/11 warnings.
And the first tower was struck at 8:46 a.m.
I believe so, yes.
Right.
Yeah, so it's 44 minutes after veers off course at 8:54.
Right, and there was already, indications that it was a hijacking because of the phone calls from American Airlines Flight 11.
Yes, that's true. And like we had talked about the other officials who had said, that they knew what was going on right away, plus you have all the FAA warnings. There should have been plenty of suspicion that right away after the first strike that it was an act of terrorism.
And so you're talking about American Airlines Flight 77 hitting the Pentagon later on at 9:38.
Right. But definitely what I'm saying is that it was 44 minutes after the plane veered off course. So, and it's after the first strike. So what's going on here is the first strike has already happened at the World Trade Center. So we know that a strike's happened, and then we have another plane that veers off course. When the World Trade Center's already been hit, and then you have a plane veer off course, we should be right on top of that. A lot of this is material that I had for a film project that I was kind of holding on to, and hopefully the project will still happen, but whether it does or it doesn't, I thought it's a good time to go ahead and put it out there. It can still be used for multiple things, and I think the important thing is to get it out there. And so some of it's stuff we talked about in the interview. We were covering so many different topics that I didn't get to say everything I wanted to say about it. Even the things we did talk about, I didn't get to finish a lot of the points, specifically air defense. There was a lot to talk about that, we kind of touched on, and a lot that we didn't talk about at all. One of their excuses is that with a transponder, they state with a transponder turned off, it's possible, though more difficult, to track an aircraft by its primary radar returns. But unlike transponder data, primary radar returns do not show the aircraft's identity and altitude. So first of all, transponder is a device that's on an airplane that helps the air traffic controllers track where it's at. And the primary radar is when they actually bounce the radar signals off the skin of the plane. So they can always track a plane by primary radar, but like they said, it's a little more difficult because then they have to get its identity, what plane it is, and then its altitude. But it can be done. The 9/11 Commission failed to consider the fact that U.S. military has more than just ground radar at their disposal. One of the excuses given by debunkers and the 9/11 Commission is that the planes on 9/11 had their transponders turned off. With the device, the transponder device on the plane turned off, it's harder to find the plane because without the transponder, they don't have the identity of the aircraft, and they also don't know its altitude. But they can still find it with their primary radar, which actually bounces the signal off of the skin of the plane. And we know that this can be done because if it couldn't, there would be no need for things like stealth fighter jets, and foreign fighter jets would be able to just fly into our country, turn their transponder off, and all of a sudden they would be able to do whatever they want because we wouldn't be able to find them if this excuse was viable at all. Now, one interesting thing I just found, which I didn't include in the reference material, is that prior to 9/11, there was actually proposals to get rid of primary radar returns, but NORAD rejected that. Good thing, because I'm sure that they needed them for events like 9/11. We don't know exactly what happened that day, how each thing was tracked, this and that, but we know some things.
And there seems to be a lot of fishy circumstances concerning the lack of air defense.
Yeah, and there's a lot of contradicting information, and there's a lot of information that just can't be found. So, and I realize this, the more and more I research, the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know, the more I realize that something I thought I knew is contradicted by this source or that source. It's a very tricky topic. Through it all, the need for a new investigation just becomes clearer and clearer. Originally, I had put a lot of this in. You might have seen Visibility 9/11 has a red flags project. So I did a small red flag there about the transponder issue.
September 11th. I should say to the American people that we're now a battlefield.
Citizens of the world, why do we question 9/11? We do so because despite having shaped both foreign and domestic policy in countries all over the world, there are literally hundreds of contradictions of the official version of what happened on that tragic day. These are the red flags of September 11th, 2001.
Planes can be tracked with transponders turned off. Most people don't realize that on September 11th, planes were known to be hijacked and flying around the eastern United States for over 70 minutes. After September 11th, many wondered why the United States Air Force was unable to stop the hijacked aircraft, especially American Airlines Flight 77, which struck the Pentagon. American Airlines Flight 11 was hijacked at 8:14 a.m. By 8:25, Boston air traffic controllers confirmed that the flight was indeed hijacked, and the aircraft struck the North Tower of the World Trade Center at 8:46. At 9:03, United Airlines Flight 175 struck the South Tower, and at that time, the whole world knew that America was under attack. It was not until 9:37 that American Airlines Flight 77 hit the Pentagon. Therefore, it was a full hour and 10 minutes between the times the FAA knew that Flight 11 was hijacked and the time that Flight 77 hit the Pentagon. How could this happen? The area around the Pentagon and Washington, D.C. is some of the most heavily defended airspace in the world. This fact led many to believe there had to be a stand-down order issued, which would have prevented standard operating procedures from allowing these aircraft to be intercepted or possibly shot down. A stand-down is defined as, quote, a relaxation from a state of readiness or alert, unquote. This certainly took place regarding air defenses on September 11th. One explanation offered was that the terrorists turned off the electronic device known as a transponder, which helps identify aircraft on radar. As stated by the 9/11 Commission, it is possible, though more difficult, to track an aircraft by its primary radar returns without the transponder. However, unlike transponder data, primary radar returns do not show the aircraft's identity and altitude. The 9/11 Commission failed to consider the fact that the U.S. military has more than just ground radar at their disposal. In 2006, a golf ball was hit off the International Space Station. New Scientist magazine reported that the ball was too small to be tracked by ground radar, but noted that, quote, U.S. military can track space debris as small as 10 centimeters across, and can sometimes see things as small as 5 centimeters wide, if it is in just the right orbit, unquote. There are 35 United States Air Force bases within range of the 9/11 flights, which included the restricted airspace surrounding the Pentagon, Capitol Hill, and the White House. It is hard to believe that a military which possesses such a highly sophisticated radar system would not have been able to track the hijacked aircraft without a transponder signal. Commercial airliners do not need their transponders turned on in order to be tracked by the U.S. military. If America was being attacked by aircraft belonging to a foreign power, it is ridiculous to think that these enemy aircraft would have transponders installed to help the U.S. Air Force shoot them down. It is equally ridiculous to believe that the U.S. military lacks the technology to track aircraft without a transponder signal.
For more information and to read a transcript of this 9/11 red flag, and to hear other red flags like this one, visit visibility911.com/redflags.